What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I am back again with another video, and as y'all can tell from the title of today's video, I'm going to be going over every weapon in the game that can be modded and giving y'all the modifications that I use for each of these weapons. Keep in mind these aren't exactly the best modifications for them, but this is what I use. But these weapons accommodate highly to my playstyle, so if you enjoy it, make sure to like and subscribe, and with that said, let's get into the video. Starting things off, we have the spear, and the weapons I use for this are the blood spiller, the sidearm knife, as well as the duct tape handle. These aren't necessarily the greatest, I don't think, but if you're crafting modifications for a spear, then you're kind of lost. The only reason to make modifications for a spear is to give to the raiders, and these are the modifications I use for the spear with the raiders. Now after the spear, we have the makeshift bat. There's only really one mod I use for this, and that's the active mod that's on it. This is another weapon I don't use a lot, and I just have the active mod on it to have the active mod on it. Even at early game, mid-ground, end game, I don't recommend putting any other mod on this weapon. I don't even recommend putting the active mod on it. This is just a weapon I don't use and don't recommend using. Now we have the baseball bat, which is the same boat as the makeshift baseball bat. Only mod I use on this is the active mod for it. There's no other purpose for it. Next up we have the cleaver, and this bad weapon by itself, but when it's fully modded, it can be really good. As you can see, I have these two blue mods on it. They're actually really good. It can turn it from an average weapon to a really good weapon. It can even be better than a machete if you have it fully modded. Up next we have the hammer. Only mods I have on this are the the BFH and the carbon handle. This is another one I do recommend modding because early game it's a big hitter. It can help out a lot in places like Bunker Alpha, so I think it's definitely worth it to invest your resources into these. Next up we got the machete, which is probably my favorite melee weapon, if not my favorite weapon in the game. In terms of blade, you can do the gut hook blade or this ripper blade. I definitely recommend the gut hook blade, but if you don't have it, the ripper blade is a fine substitute. And then in terms of handle, a lot of people go with the bone handle, but personally I don't, because the bone handle takes away so much durability, and I don't think the additions it has justifies the loss of durability, so these are my ideal mods for the machete. Next up we got the pipe. This is another really good weapon. You put these two mods on it, it can be a really good weapon. The pipe by itself kinda but with both of these mods on it, turns it into a top 5 weapon in the game. Next up we got this saw. If you're early game, you're probably not gonna have all these mods, but these are the best mods for it. The engine is actually a really good mod. It can turn this into a 60 damage in one shot, and then 180 in a single sneak hit, which is really good. I definitely recommend, if you can, invest your resources into this. It's really good. Now we're at the bow. I do not recommend putting any resources into this, like at all. It's not worth crafting. It's not worth modding. It's honestly not even good for beginning players, if you ask me. Just skip over the bow. Next up we got the zip gun, another gun that's kind of booty, similar to the bow. I don't recommend modding this. What I do is I just put them in the recycler, try and get a steel bar. But if you're super early game and you want to use this for, say, the Frenzy Giants at Bunker Alpha, these are the modifications I have for them. Now we got the Glock. This one's probably the most heavily modded one. Each modification is a different thing. On the screen I'll have my primary loadout and then my secondary one. My primary one's a lot more expensive, and the secondary one is still good, while being more so for beginning players. Next up we got the M16. This is actually a weird weapon. The best mods for it, if you ask me, aren't blue mods or purple mods, they're all gray mods. All of my mods on this weapon are gray, and it's been working for me like a charm. I definitely recommend investing into these resources because they're not terribly expensive, no matter where you are in the game, and it's definitely worth it at all points. Next up we got the Uzi. I wouldn't invest too much time and resources into these weapons, or into this weapon, because the Uzi's still a very non-common gun, and you do have to put in a little bit for the modifications, but if you do decide that you want to put into the modifications, here's what I use. Next up we got the AK. This one is really good either way. With the muzzle, you can either put this one that has stability and the other one which is a silencer. The one with stability obviously helps for locations like the lab or the bunker, which makes shooting a lot easier to where you miss less, but the silencer is a lot better if you're doing raids with the AK. Next up we have the Winchester. I honestly don't, this is another gun like the zip gun I don't recommend modding, but the only reason I have these weapon modifications on it is because the fully modded Winchester looks cool as shit. I mean, just look at this, tell me it doesn't look amazing. Exactly, you can't. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing this unless you want a gun that looks cool to put on your armor stand. Next up we got the shotgun. This is kind of like the AK. There's two different options. You can do the long silencer or the spread shot. depending on which one you have. The long silencer is great for raids, makes raiding fun, but the spread shot by itself is great. You can hit multiple different targets with it. And honestly, now that I think about it, the shotgun is probably the most fun to use in the game while it has the long silencer, because it will literally make all of the body parts just fly. Next up, we have the VSS. Base model VSS, kinda but if you put all these mods on it, it can actually be a really, really elite gun that I definitely recommend putting your resources into. And finally, we got the SCAR. The fully modded SCAR is probably the best weapon in the game. If you're early game, I don't recommend putting my resources into this, but if you're mid game, end game, this is definitely something you should do to help with locations like Bunker Bravo and the laboratory, as well as the transport hub. And that's the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. If you guys have any other video ideas, make sure to go ahead and leave them down in the comments below, as well as join the Discord. Link for that will be in the description. But anyway, that's all for me. I hope you guys all have an amazing rest of y'all's day. I'm out. Peace.